This episode is sponsored by Walter White, a family man.
Family.
The animated situational comedy King of the Hill first debuted in 1997 and was created by Mike Judge, who was just coming off a 4-year run of Beavis and Butthead. The first few episodes of King of the Hill have a very Beavis and Butthead sort of visual aesthetic. Everything is shown in these sort of washed out or faded out watercolor styles. But where Beavis and Butthead put the focus on two stupid guys that brought frustration to everyone around them, King of the Hill takes the opposite approach, where the world itself brings complication to a stable character. And to make this concept work, the pilot episode has to give us a strong sense of who this character is, who are his friends, who's his family, what's the general attitude of the neighborhood, give us something to look at and look forward to. And thankfully, right off the bat, we get an establishment of the core cast's mindset and personalities. To highlight the working class heart of the show, this is done through their relationship with Hank's motor. We've got Dale, who struggles with acronyms.
You know what they say Ford stands for, don't you? It stands for Fix It Again, Tony.
Boomhauer, who presents his mumble rap shtick right off the bat.
Tell you what you do, you just take them dang old spark plugs out in that little hole, you just put a little oil around there, just like Bobby intercepts, just like it go boom, boom, just like that.
Then there's Hank, who says that his truck just needs leadership. And finally there's Bill, who, surprisingly, for how important he becomes later in the show, doesn't really say anything of worth here. He's just sort of a blank slate. This scene also demonstrates that, much like Beavis and Butthead, it has an interest in commenting on the current political and cultural zeitgeist. Hank brings up the time George Bush Sr. allowed his stomach to bukkake on the Japanese Prime Minister, and brings up Seinfeld, a show that would have been greatly improved with more vomiting. This is all to say that the opening of the show allows us to gauge the vibe of what we're in for. It's a slice-of-life Americana, or American anime, that uses smart writing and strong character traits to great effect. After the opener, we are introduced to the Hill family. There's Bobby Hill, who enjoys the finer things in life.
Mother of God, it's all toilet sounds.
There's also Luann, Hank's niece by marriage, and who's staying with the Hills while her troubled home life figures itself out. And finally there's Peggy Hill, who, to be honest, feels a little bland here.
I'm a substitute Spanish teacher. Los estudiantes son mis amigos.
This is a far cry from the fiery and unflappable powerhouse she would become, much more of a farmer's wife sort of archetype. But hey, you know, we're a little busy solidifying the Hank and Bobby characters to give much to Peggy.
Can't hear you, Dad.
Brutal. It's once Bobby gets stitch-kissed that the actual plot of the episode starts to take hold. While Bobby walks around with a black eye, Hank is seen yelling at a totally unimportant clerk who will have no bearing on any future episodes.
You're gonna have to pay for that, dude.
You're fired!
Seeing this, these two hobgoblins start to put together a warped image of the character we've been following for all of 5 minutes. From there, the rumor mill starts to get out of control, and we enter into one of the show's favorite comedy wells, the surreal blandness of the system. In this case, Child Protective Services. While waiting for the shit to hit the fan, we get some more establishing nonsense from Dale and Hank.
I say let the world warm up. See what Boutros golly thinks about that. We'll grow oranges in Alaska.
It's already 110 in the summer, and if it gets 1 degree hotter, I'm gonna kick your ass.
When the social worker does arrive, we see the accumulation of events start to paint a rather poor picture of Hank. Now, it is easy to say that this is a rather silly situation for the pilot episode. We barely know these people, and trying to create the fear that the Child Protective Services guy will actually take Bobby away is a bit of a stretch. However, the value in this situation is that, for Hank, he has to start fighting back against a worst-case scenario of having his kid taken away, which makes for good drama between the characters and is a relatable fear for parents. Now, I will say, as someone who has gone through mandated reporter training, the reports being told to Child Services does warrant this visit. Someone did say that Hank hit his kid with a bat after all, but the agent is intentionally provoking the situation and definitely paints this process in a negative light, which, thankfully, is smoothed out later on. Despite Bobby's strange apathy and sort of glum attitude this episode, Hank firmly establishes that he cares for his family, something that eventually becomes difficult to find in animated family comedies. Hank isn't an angry man, but he's a little too eager to get into fights. This is a man with little patience for bullshit. This is a man that sells propane and propane accessories. This is a man with a urethra like a WD-40 straw.
No more bouncing that ball!
Hank, we have a visitor.
After getting kicked out of the Hills house, the social worker checks in on the neighborhood. We see Dale has a rather, well, let's call it complicated family life.
Nancy, you've been going to that healer for 12 years and you still get headaches every night.
Healing process takes time, honey.
What is it, Daddy?
You ever seen Hank hit Bobby?
Nuh-uh, never.
Boomhauer is just Boomhauer, and surprisingly, the social worker doesn't go visit Bill. For how important a character Bill is to the show, he gets surprisingly little in the pilot. Thankfully, Bill's absence is made up for by Luann crying and ranting at Hank, which is always a wonderfully uncomfortable situation. And speaking of uncomfortable, why does the social worker look like this when he says Los Angeles?
Where you from, son?
Los Angeles?
I mean, I don't get it. It's so weird, right? Ugh. Once the social worker is shown to be incompetent and biased against the Hills, the final boss of Child Protective Services, who definitely embodies that sort of old guy who knows everything persona, lets Bobby know that the investigation is over and even apologizes for the shitty social worker. He goes so far as to fire Twig Boy and send his butt back to LA, a fact that Bobby decides to hide from his parents. This is a weirdly cruel act for Bobby. He's literally just fucking with his dad, knowing that Hank is afraid that Bobby will get taken away. It's weirdly, uncomfortable. I don't know. He's just outright bullying his own dad for seemingly no reason. I get that, he's just doing it because he's like a shitty little kid, but this is nothing like the Bobby we come to know and love. But you know what? Hold up. Let's be fair to Bobby. Maybe he's got a good reason for it. Maybe he's punishing Hank because, for God's sakes, Hank, he's spreading bacon grease on his bread. That is a crime against humanity. Ugh. But anyway, amid all of the Bobby torture, for some reason the Child Protective boss shows up to their house to clear the air, which I don't know. He shows up because I guess maybe he wants to tell Hank to wear that brown shirt more because it looks really good. But I don't really know why else he would show up. I mean, is he really going to take the time out of his day to drive down to the Hill House and say, fill out paperwork or something? He's just going to mail something. I don't know. It's just there for plot convenience, really. Anyway, that plot hole aside, I do enjoy the reveal of Bobby's lie.
The investigation has been off for a week, only Bobby didn't tell us.
I'll kill him!
All right.
This then pivots the central conflict into a Bobby thinks you don't love him sort of moment, which, I mean, I don't know. I never really bought that from Bobby originally. It feels like he's just sort of saying that to get out of being in trouble. And I mean, even if you do sort of love someone, you're allowed to be pissed off at them if they start messing with you, especially if they're doing this shit to you.
What in the heck? Don't you see I'm working here? Close the dang door! Stop hitting that button! Give me that thing!
But even if this pivot is a little clunky, it does bring Hank's own relationship with his father into view, which, just says so much about Hank's mentality and why he's so repressed.
You know how I was raised? What my father's like?
I got my shins blown off by a Japan man's machine gun, so don't come crying to me with your problems.
This leads us to this incredible final scene where Hank tries to tell Bobby how much he loves him. And can I just say that showing Hank without his shoes here is such an incredible little touch. There's just something so vulnerable about it that just suits the mood perfectly. It's animated great with wonderful shadowing and a perfect watercolor-esque sky that I love so darn much. Getting here was a little rough, but I'm thankful that we have this uplifting moment, which is wrapped up with this amusing little pass-by by the social worker.
He punched him! I knew it! I told him! Did you see that?
Mother of God!
So, what did the pilot do right? Well, it got Hank's dad, Dale, and Hank just about perfect. They feel complete right out of the box. Bobby is a little all over the place, and Luann only gets a teeny bit of screen time, just enough to establish that she's living there, she's got it rough, and is actually pretty handy with cars.
I borrowed your truck this morning, Uncle Hank. It wouldn't start at first because you had a clogged fuel line, but I blew it clean.
Am I the only one who wishes that character trait stuck around in Luann? Because they drop it after a while, and I'm really sad to see it go. But Peggy and Bill are mere shadows of what they would eventually become, which is understandable given the time constraints, but a little bit of a shame. I guess you can only fit in so much into one episode, and I do think they did an excellent job. Using the word failures in the title of this video was admittedly a bit of a clickbait, but given how grand of a character Peggy is, showing her as little more than a passive housewife in the pilot could certainly be called something of a, well, let's be generous and call it a letdown. Even just one line to hint at her personality would have been enough, but whatever, missed opportunity. All in all, I would say that the pilot episode succeeds in giving us a strong basis to build off of. There's a lot of room to grow, and boy does the next episode really capitalize on growth.
Nice and clean, but I think old Sigmund Freud might have a thing or two to say about it.
What? Oh no!
I mean, let's think about this, guys. Hank does keep an angry picture of his dad in the bedroom. There's definitely something weird and sexual going on there. But that's for next episode's discussion. For now, we can say definitively that this episode has indeed been reviewed to death. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.